Mr. Butler.
Hello?
Hello. Can you hear me?
Hello, Tim.
It is such a pleasure to speak with you again. How are you doing today?
Good, thanks. How are you?
I'm doing well. I'm doing very well. Thank you very much. This is, I never thought I'd get to talk to you twice regarding one lovely book. But
It's a year later and the paperback's about to come out, so there you go.
I've been enjoying some of the interviews that you've been doing, and I have to laugh because during them you're trying to remember things. You're talking about editing this book down to a reasonable size and trying not to get sued, which I find really funny. Was that actually a big concern?
Yeah, I had to prove absolutely everything, and if I didn't have photographs or letters or anything like that, or documents, I couldn't write about it. And then, so I whittled all that down for the US version, then I sent the finished version for America over to UK to be published. And I said, oh no, you can't say that. So I had to whittle it down even more for the UK. It's just ridiculous.
Now, so that must means you have a lot more secrets that you're holding on to that may never find out.
Well, I might do it as a fiction book, then they can't sue me.
Now, I have to ask you, how much of a painstaking task was it to create the audiobook?
Oh, it's a horrible experience because I hate speaking anyway, on things like that. Even on phones, for instance, as you might realise, I hate using the telephone. But yet, I found out that there's no way that the least thing I'd ever be is an actor. And like you hear all these audio books, but they're all usually by actors. And the only reason why I agreed for me to do it, I listened to Rob Halford's book, and that was great. I really got into it, especially having known Rob for so long. He really came over well on his audio book. So I said, yeah, okay, I'll do my own thing. And I went in the studio, and it was just like stage fright. And it's like, well, on this day. And then they'd like say, oh, can you say that line again? And like, it's really weird.
It sounds like you weren't drinking enough pints of beer.
I haven't been drinking beer since 2015. That's probably the problem.
Now, I have to ask you, what are some of the questions that you are getting really tired of answering these days?
It's hard to say because it's like the same kind of questions since we began, really, since Sabbath began. The black magic and all that kind of crap. But most of the book things have been good. Some of them have been quite original.
Now, what did you learn about yourself writing about yourself? That
I'm not very good at writing. I don't know. I think when I was looking back on things, well, number one, how lucky I am. I don't know what I deserve. I don't know what I did in the past life to deserve this life. Because, for the first 18 years of my life, I just didn't seem to have any future whatsoever. And then looking back on it now, it's just like I feel like the luckiest person on earth. It's like incredible.
Well,
so I definitely learned how lucky I've been in life.
Now, despite the conditions when you were growing up in Birmingham, it was almost like the planets became aligned, and it created the perfect conditions to form a brand new hard rock band that was angry, that just wanted to fight back, and was really disappointed with the planet.
Well, we'd all grown up in the same area. We literally lived 2 or 3 streets away from each other. we all knew about each other around then. But and it wasn't until me and Ozzy got the Rare Breed band together that we sort of realised how much we had in common, and we wanted to go professional, and because we've been fired from our jobs, and the rest of the guys in the Rare Breed had regular jobs and regular income and that kind of thing. They didn't want anything. So Ozzy knew of Tony and Bill Ward, who lived just round the corner, so we went into their house, and that's they agreed to join me and Ozzy, and that's where it started from. But we were all in the same area. It was quite a rough area, but we didn't know any different. We loved where we were brought up.
It was quite the coincidence. I had to go out for an errand, and the first song that I heard on Sirius XM's Liquid Metal was Black Sabbath, the song. And I was thinking, you guys had the music, you had the artwork, but did you really put a lot of thought into the actual image? How did you want your image to be?
We never really thought about it. It wasn't until, it certainly wasn't a black magic and Satanist and all that kind of crap, because, we'd sort of grown out of all that kind of stuff. And there was a band called Black Widow coming out at the same time as us, and they were like doing all these fake sacrifices and all that crap on stage. And we thought it was like totally corny. So the song about Black Sabbath was against all that kind of stuff. Because we were all into horror films as well, but we were into stuff. And when we saw the cover for the first album, we loved it, because it was like it really summed up what we were all about. So we loved that kind of thing. Like, it's more of a Hammer horror film vibe that we wanted to project, rather than Satan and all that kind of stuff.
Do you remember designing the original Black Sabbath logo, and who has it?
What, this Flying Devil thing?
Yes.
We played at a gig, I think it was in Florida, and that was the first version of that Flying Devil was on the backstage passes. The guy, the promoter at the gig, had come up with that image, and I said to the rest of the band, that'd be a great logo for the band. And we talked to the guy, and he went, yeah, just take it. And he modified it a little bit, and that's the way it came about.
Was he ever paid a royalty?
He'd stolen it from somebody else. I think it's actually... I think it's... I went into a bar 8 years ago in Hungary, and they had that exactly the same logo, was the bar logo. So I think it's something to do with either Hungarian or Czechoslovakian. But I can't prove it.
Sorry, that's funny. I find interesting the Black Sabbath formed roughly within like a year or two when the Beatles had broken up. And I'm referring to Gladwell's 10,000 Hours theory, where the Beatles did that Hamburg residency and really honed their art. And you guys followed with the same residency. And like, what did that mean, going to Germany? And I guess that's really where you just learned how to play.
Yeah, because the Star Club was like such a famous club in England at the time. The Beatles had played there, so everybody wanted to play there. And by the time we got there, it was sort of well past its sell-by date. And we had to do like 8 hours every day playing to nobody. But it was great to, we just used it as to write songs, and then we'd write them in the afternoon, or jam them in the afternoon because there was nobody ever in the club, and then play them at night and see what the reaction was. So it was great for getting it all together. Plus, there's a horrible dump by then, and the place where we had to stay was like it recently was burnt, had a fire in there, so we had to sleep around this big hole in the floor. And it just brought us together. We thought if we could survive that, then we can survive anything.
Do you remember your first really big royalty check, and what did you buy?
Well, the very first one was when we got our first record deal. And the record deal for the first album was £1,000, which is about $1,300 now. So we divided. We spent £500 making the record, and we all had £125 each, and that was the most money we'd ever seen.
Wow, that's amazing. Absolutely amazing. What I also find amazing is 5 albums in 3 years, really pivotal, iconic, and now you've got bands that are spending years just to make one album.
Yeah, that's the way it's evolved, I suppose. I always think you just lose the spontaneity and the feel of stuff. But when we did the 13 album, that thing forever, and some of it was great doing it, and some of it not so good. But just didn't have the same feeling as like the old 70s album, or even Heaven and Hell. I love doing Heaven and Hell before. But, yeah, I think the longer you take over something, it becomes forced in the end, and you sort of lose the initial rawness and the feel of the music.
Do you think you'd ever work with Rick Rubin again?
Nope. I don't think he'd work. He certainly wouldn't work with me ever again, or Tony.
Wow.
Tony was incredibly disappointed with him. In fact, Tony took some of the master tapes and redid them.
Really? Wow. What do you think the best sounding Black Sabbath album is?
I always liked the first 3 albums because it's so basic and you can't really go wrong with it. We played them as a live gig in the studio kind of thing. So there was nothing there was no ridiculous kinds of overdubs and all that kind of stuff. So I like the first 3, and I like Heaven and Hell and Mob Rules because I like Martin Birch as a producer. And Sabbath, Bloody Sabbath's a good album as well, good production-wise, yeah.
In the late 70s, when things started to get a little bit tense, what do you remember from meeting these guys called Van Halen and them heading on the road with you?
They were great. I really liked them, and they did one of my favourite all-time Kinks songs, You Really Got Me. So, I immediately really liked them because they'd done a cover of that, and that was their first, big hit single. And they were great to get on with, but then as the tour went on, they started copying, Dave Lee Roth became an Aussie clone, and it was really upsetting Ozzy at the time because, Dave Lee, whatever Ozzy did one night, Dave Lee Roth would say the same thing the next night. And it was upsetting Ozzy. And then Eddie was doing, these extended solos, so Tony had to have a word with him about that. But it was good because they brought in, this whole new younger audience for us, and they actually brought in some women and girls that we'd never really had at our gigs. And but what pissed us off is that Warner Brothers completely concentrated on Van Halen, and it was almost like we were the support band. Warner Brothers your old hat kind of stuff. This is Van Halen of the future, so that they did everything for Van Halen and nothing for us. There was no promotion for us whatsoever. So, but they were great guys and they were a great band. And it was still long-lasting friendships, especially Tony and Eddie.
Can Can you tell me about the Live Evil and Speak of the Devil era when those records came out? Were you happy with the way Live Evil came out?
Not at all at first, because the audience part was completely missing off it. It's like there was about 3 people in the audience by the sound of it. But I think it's been redone anyway. But it was such a bad time doing that album. I don't think I've ever listened to it.
And did you ever listen to Speak of the Devil? Did you ever listen to the Black Sabbath versions on Ozzy's record?
No.
Tough times back then, right?
Yeah, it was sort of like Don Arden, the manager who hated Ronnie, so wouldn't manage Black Sabbath anymore, became the manager of Ozzy. And he sort of put out that Speak of whatever it's called, just to piss us off, basically.
Yeah.
But we didn't care anyway.
I know there's talk about Bill Ward and these final shows. What does a rhythm section mean to you? Like, what kind of a relationship did you have growing up with Bill and performing together?
Well, Bill was like the first drummer I'd ever play bass with, because I was rhythm guitarist in the other band me and Ozzy were in. And I switched to bass. And Bill was like the greatest sort of person you could possibly learn bass to. He's drumming. And he really, really inspired my bass playing. And the thing with Bill, he was a jazz drummer. His heroes like Buddy Rich, Gene Krupa, and those kind of people. So he was like an out-and-out jazzer, and he brought this whole new like swing to rock drumming, and it was great for me because I could learn all the kind of jazz scales and things. So he really helped me when I first picked up the bass.
Now, were you aware of watching Bill and his declining ability? It's all about Bill's abilities, and it's, as a fan, it was pretty sad for me to see the final Black Sabbath tour and Bill not part of it. But did you see his playing decline? Is that true?
It wasn't. I didn't think it was his playing. I was surprised when I came back from holiday when we were doing the 13 album, the writing part of it. And I went away on holiday. We all had a break from writing. Me and my wife went to Hawaii, and I came back and found out that Bill had been fired. And it was like, why? What's going on? And I still haven't got an answer from anybody who fired him and why. There's been rumours about his health and that kind of thing. But I was listening to like the stuff that we were doing with Bill on that 13 album, and I love it. It really does sound like the old Sabbath album, like the first 3 albums, the drumming on it, and I love that kind of thing. So, but for some reason it was, I don't know whether it's the producer or, I don't know. He obviously wasn't up to somebody's taste. But then, he's had ill health, and we offered Bill to come on the tour and just do like 2 or 3 songs. And he said, no, it's either the whole thing or nothing. And we just couldn't have a world tour going on. And then like cancel on it if something happened to Bill. So we had to get another drummer in that we knew that would be there every night and with no health problems. I'm not saying that Bill would have had health problems. We just couldn't risk it. And he wasn't willing to do like 2 or 3 songs and see how it went.
Do you think that there needs to be some closure? Is there something that, you know what I mean, just to tie a bow on this beautiful entity called Black Sabbath?
Well, Ozzy's been texting me about doing one final show, and that's it, with Bill. But it's just not going to happen.
Really? You don't think it's going to happen?
No.
Wow. That's, I don't think I've heard that statement yet.
But then, you know, I always said that the original Black Sabbath would never get back together, and then the next day, Ozzy called me up and said, let's get the band back together. So, you know, you say these things. Hopefully, if a miracle happens, then yeah, it'd be great to do it. But, you know, it's up to people, everybody's health and how they feel about it, but I just can't see it happening.
Now
I'd love it to happen, but...
Sorry?
I'd love it to happen, to just, like, do one final, even if it's one song, with the original four of us, with Bill on the drums. Even if it's just one song.
Would you like it to be back at home?
I'd love it to be, yeah. I mean, it certainly couldn't be a tour. I mean, it'd only ever be, like, one or two shows. And, like, you know, 3 or 4 songs, I suppose. But that'd be it. It wouldn't be a tour or anything like that.
Do you think if that happened, would you want to sit on the Black Sabbath bench?
In Birmingham?
Yes.
I already have.
Oh, you have? Okay.
Yeah, well, me and Tony went to the opening of it.
That's right. And
so that was the only time I've been there.
Now, aside from interviews, how are you keeping busy? Last question. And how are you feeling? How's your health? And are the creative juices still flowing? Because Tony's got an album coming out at some point in time. Were you aware of that?
Yeah, I've heard about that. Yeah. I mean, I think Tony's always wanted to do like solo stuff rather than be. I know the first thing that he did, he wanted that to be a solo album, but the record company made him call it Black Sabbath. So
right.
I'm not sure. I don't know whether I'd bother going. I mean, I was going to do something with the band called Deadland Ritual with.
Pedro.
Known from Guns N' Roses, and that fizzled out. I mean, there was some really good stuff on it, and then like the pandemic hit, and just that was it. Finished it, and after that, I've just been doing things. I mean, I'm still playing every day. I still love playing my bass, and sometimes if I get a good idea, I'll go up to my studio upstairs and put the idea down just for me to listen to. But I can't be bothered doing a whole album or anything like that. So basically these days I'm doing lots and lots of road trips around America.
As long as you're enjoying life.
That's the main thing. I've been up and down, soap opera life for the past 50 odd years. Now it's time to just relax and enjoy life.
My last question, every day there is a new generation of a fan that is finding out about a band like Black Sabbath. And my question was, how are you staying happy? You have made millions of music fans happy with your music since the late 60s. How does that warm your heart?
Oh, it's fantastic. It's like the ultimate compliment. It's the best that, forget all the money and everything else and forget all the criticism and people that said that we'd never do anything and go back and get a proper job and all that kind of stuff in the beginning. That critics hated us in the 70s. And to be able to see like the love for Sabbath these days and the inspiration that, for a lot of bands that have been and bands that are coming up. It's great. It's like the greatest compliment a musician can have.
Well, you've made my life musically, so thank you so much. I always appreciate you talking to BraveWords. Be well, stay well, and keep those horns high.
Okay. Cheers, Tim.
Okay.
All the best.
Cheers. Take care, man. Thank you.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.
All the best. Bye.
Cheers.